I was standing in the middle of my front yard, sweat rolling down my neck, a shovel still in my hand, when 3 men in button-up shirts and smug expressions walked up my gravel driveway. One of them, a tall guy with slick-back hair and mirrored sunglasses, handed me a folded letter without saying a word. I didn't even need to open it to know it was trouble. Mr. Carter, the one with the clipboard, started, clearing his throat like he was about to read me a sermon. "You're in violation of HOA Code 13B. Unauthorized land use. Unauthorized structures. Failure to seek prior approval. You've got 72 hours to tear it down." I looked at the letter. 72 hours to tear down the ranch I'd spent 3 years building with my bare hands. The same ranch that helped my disabled brother earn a living training rescue horses. The one I built on land my family had owned for generations. 72 hours. I asked, my voice cracking more from disbelief than anger. "That's right. And if it's not gone by then, we'll fine you $500 a day. Starting Monday." He turned to leave like it was just another coffee stop on his HOA patrol route. But what none of them realized was this: I wasn't just some guy with a hobby farm. I owned this land. And what they built their HOA office on, that was mine too. I just hadn't told anyone. Not yet. 2 years earlier, I moved back to Millstone Ridge after Dad passed away. It wasn't exactly home anymore. Mom had moved to Florida with her new husband, my sister Ashley was always too busy to help, and the town had changed, mostly thanks to the HOA that seemed to run everything now. Back when I was a kid, this was farmland. Quiet, open, and honest. Then the developers came. They paved over fields, installed fountains that never worked, and renamed the streets after birds nobody'd ever seen: Blue Heron Loop, Red Finch Way. Fancy stuff for a place that still had cows down the road. But Dad had left me more than memories. He left me the deed to the last untouched 12 acres behind our house. While everyone else sold out, he held on. And I did too. I came home with a plan: turn that land into something that mattered. A working ranch for retired horses and kids with disabilities. My younger brother Eli had autism and had been nonverbal until he was 10, he spoke his first full sentence while grooming a horse. Horses healed him. So I wanted to return the favor. But apparently, healing and hard work didn't fit the aesthetic of Millstone Ridge. The HOA sure let me know that, real quick. I'll never forget the first time I brought one of the horses down to the pasture behind my house. His name was Domino, spotted like a Dalmatian, gentle as a lamb. Eli stood by the fence, his hands shaking until the horse nuzzled him, and something in him just lit up. By the end of that week, we had 6 horses and 3 volunteers. By the end of the month, families were asking to bring their kids over after school. It was never about profit. I didn't charge a dime. But the complaints started rolling in anyway. Horses are too loud. Smell travels over property lines. Children running unsupervised near community trails. And every complaint came from the same person, Cheryl Pierce, the HOA president. Ashley's best friend. Yeah. That Ashley. My sister. She was a rising star in town, married to a realtor, drove a white Range Rover, hosted wine tastings, wore athleisure like it was a uniform. And she hated that I came back. Hated that Dad left me the land and not her. "You could have sold that property and given Mom a break," she told me once, after church. "Instead, you're bringing down the neighborhood with your little horse farm." Little did she know, I wasn't bringing it down. I was about to own it. See, 6 months before the HOA sent that 72-hour notice, I found out something wild. While I was reviewing the title on my land for zoning permits, I discovered a clause buried deep in a stack of legal papers. Turns out, my land wasn't just those 12 acres behind the house. It also included a commercial easement underneath the HOA clubhouse and its parking lot. You read that right. The very ground their office sat on was technically still part of the old Carter Ranch deed. My deed. They'd never officially transferred it. Just assumed it was public. So I did what any responsible landowner would do. I registered the plot. Filed taxes on it. Paid a commercial zoning fee. And waited. So when those clipboard cowboys gave me that letter, I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't throw it in their smug faces. I just smiled. Nodded. Then I walked into the house, poured myself a glass of sweet tea, and sent one email to the HOA's treasurer. Effective immediately, monthly rent for the Carter parcel located under your office structure is being adjusted in line with current market rates. New total, $15,000 per month. Payable within 30 days. I clicked send. And waited. When I sent that email to the HOA, I half expected a reply within the hour. A panicked phone call. Maybe even an apology. Instead, I got silence. 3 days passed. The 72-hour countdown ticked away, and the only thing that changed was the number of cars showing up at Cheryl Pierce's house. She was the kind of woman who threw dinner parties just to show off her granite countertops, but this week, her door kept swinging open for briefcases and board members, not wine glasses. By Saturday morning, I got my answer. It came in the form of an official-looking letter taped to my door. Big red stamp at the top, cease and desist. I opened it slowly, standing on my porch in my boots, still smelling like hay and horse feed. The letter claimed I was attempting fraudulent extortion of a homeowners association, and if I pursued the matter, they'd take legal action and seek damages. I laughed so hard I had to sit down on the porch swing. They thought this was a bluff. They thought I was just some hillbilly with a couple of horses and a bad attitude. What they didn't know was, I'd already hired a lawyer. A damn good one. One of Dad's old army buddies who now specialized in real estate litigation out in Austin. The man owed Dad a favor, and he'd spent the last 3 weeks helping me prepare every inch of paperwork. Deed copies. Tax receipts. Historical surveys. My claim was ironclad. So I made a second move. I sent certified letters. One to the HOA board. One to Cheryl personally. And one taped, beautifully and professionally, to the glass door of their headquarters. Notice to vacate. You have 30 days to remove all operations and structures from parcel #7B, currently operating without lease under Carter Family Trust jurisdiction. Failure to comply will result in immediate legal action. But the cherry on top. I posted the notice on the neighborhood Facebook group. And that is when everything exploded. Within an hour, the post had over 400 comments. Some were furious. How dare you threaten our HOA? This is a community. Others started asking questions. Wait, is it true the HOA never paid rent on the clubhouse land? Did anyone even check the Carter deed before we built that thing? Is that legal? Then came the best one. Someone uploaded a drone photo. Clear as day, the HOA office building, smack in the middle of my dad's old boundary lines. I hadn't even taken the picture. Someone else did. All the proof I needed was now being passed around like wildfire. That night, Cheryl called me personally. Jordan, she said, her voice syrup-sweet, like I hadn't just handed her an eviction notice. Let's not blow this out of proportion. We're neighbors. Maybe we can find a compromise. I leaned against the kitchen counter and looked out the window at the ranch. I'm listening, I said. How about we drop the order on your ranch, and you forget about the whole rent thing? I laughed once, sharp and quick. No deal. You gave me 72 hours to tear down a place where disabled kids ride horses. I'm giving you 30 days to move your Keurig and your copy machine off my land." She hung up. The next day, I got another surprise. Ashley showed up. She pulled into my driveway without calling first, stepped out of her car in 6-inch heels and a blazer, like she was storming a boardroom instead of visiting her own brother. Her mouth was set in that tight little smile she always used when she wanted something but hated to ask. I met her halfway down the drive. "You could have talked to me first," she said. "You're embarrassing the family." "You mean the family you ignored until I inherited the land?" She winced. "That land should have gone to both of us." "Dad left you the lake house," I reminded her. "You sold it to buy a third car. I kept this because I use it. For something good." She crossed her arms. "You're gonna lose, Jordan. Cheryl's connected. She's got lawyers. The board. Money. You're just one guy." I smiled. "No, Ashley. I'm one guy with a deed. And you all forgot to read the fine print." Her face flushed, and she stormed back to her car. I watched her speed off, gravel spitting out behind her tires like fury in motion. But she wasn't done. I knew it. Ashley never backed down, especially not when she felt like she'd been made a fool. The next morning, it happened. The ranch gate was spray-painted. Big red letters, "Not welcome." I stood there staring at it, heart thudding like a war drum. The horses were already stirring in their stalls. Domino snorted nervously. Eli walked up behind me, still in his pajamas, barefoot in the morning grass. "Who did that?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer. Because I already knew. The HOA had declared war. But what they didn't understand, what Ashley didn't understand, was that this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was personal. And I had every intention of finishing what I started. The morning after the graffiti, I filed a police report. The sheriff, a man named Clint who'd known my dad for years, shook his head when he saw the mess on my gate. "Whole town's gettin' nastier by the year," he muttered. "You want me to question the HOA board?" "No," I said, folding my arms. "Not yet. I want them to think they're still winning. Because that's when people slip up, when they're cocky." But I was done playing fair. That afternoon, I gathered every document I had. The deed, the zoning maps, even old black and white photos of my dad riding horses through what was now the HOA's community picnic area, and I scanned them all into a clean PDF. Then I uploaded them, in full, to the same neighborhood Facebook page that had gone nuclear last week. Since there seems to be some confusion, here's the original deed and legal description of parcel #7B. Feel free to verify with county records. Transparency is key. Within 30 minutes, I got 10 DMs from neighbors. Half of them were stunned. The other half were furious, but not at me. At Cheryl. Turns out, a lot of folks had bones to pick with the HOA. One woman named Diane told me they fined her $150 because her daughter's bike was left in the driveway for more than 15 minutes. Another man had been forced to repaint his house 3 times in 6 months because the color wasn't consistent with the community palette, even though it had been approved the first time. Then there was the older couple on Finch Way. The HOA had forced them to cut down the tree their son had planted before he died in Afghanistan. Said it obstructed the sidewalk. These weren't just petty rules. They were power plays. And Cheryl Pierce sat at the top of it all. So I decided to dig deeper. Late that night, I opened a file my lawyer had sent me weeks ago, labeled simply HOA Budget Audit. Inside were line items. Expenses. Transfers. Stipends. But one entry jumped out like a glowing red flag. Administrative bonus, $24,000, Cheryl Pierce, board discretionary. 24 grand. As a bonus? From neighborhood dues? And that was just 1 year. I reached out to Diane and asked her to help me get more records. She was an accountant. Smart, sharp, and absolutely fed up. 3 days later, she handed me a flash drive with 10 years of budget files from her time on the finance committee. What we found was worse than I expected. Fake invoices. Personal spa visits filed as community wellness. First-class flights to Florida for a training seminar. This wasn't just abuse of power. It was theft. By the end of the week, I had 2 folders, one with all the legal documentation proving I owned the land under the HOA's headquarters, and another with the financial evidence of embezzlement. I didn't go public right away. Not yet. First, I gave them one last chance. I scheduled a meeting with Cheryl and 2 board members, publicly, through the Facebook page, in full view of every nosy neighbor in Millstone Ridge. I invited local media too. Small town paper, nothing flashy. When Cheryl arrived, she walked in with that usual smugness, wearing a bright red blazer like she was giving a TED Talk. Ashley was behind her, lips pursed, arms crossed, refusing to look at me. Before we begin, I said calmly, standing in the HOA clubhouse, which, again, sat directly on my land, I'd like to give you an opportunity to resolve this quietly. Cheryl leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Oh, we're listening. I dropped the eviction. You issue a formal apology to every resident you've unfairly fined. You step down from the board. And you repay the misused HOA funds. The silence was so thick, you could have cut it with a butter knife. Then Cheryl laughed. Actually laughed. You think you can blackmail us with budget records? Who's going to believe a horse farmer with a grudge? That was her mistake. Because I turned to the projector on the wall, plugged in the flash drive Diane had given me, and began scrolling. Photos. Signatures. Credit card receipts. One by one, the images lit up the screen. The boardroom fell dead silent. By the time I finished, Cheryl's face was pale, and Ashley was gone, slipped out sometime between the 3rd and 4th document. But it wasn't over. Not yet. The next morning, I got a letter from a lawyer, her lawyer. Cheryl was suing me for defamation. But this time, I didn't blink. Because attached to my response was a petition signed by 178 residents of Millstone Ridge demanding her removal. And a complaint filed with the state HOA Oversight Board for financial misconduct. But the real betrayal? That came 2 nights later, when Eli woke me up at 2 a.m., shaking me by the shoulders. Fire, he whispered. I ran outside barefoot. The barn was in flames. The sky lit up orange, the dry summer air turning my lungs to smoke. By the time the fire department arrived, it was too late. Domino was gone. So were 2 others. The place we built, the place Dad built, was nothing but charred timber. And sitting on the gravel by the gate, melted and blackened by ash, was the same red spray paint can they used on my fence. I dropped to my knees, coughing, staring at the ruin. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was war. And I was going to burn the whole system down, one board member at a time. The smell of smoke clung to my skin for days. I couldn't scrub it off. I couldn't sleep without hearing the crackle of burning wood in my head. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw Domino's terrified eyes staring through the flames, my brother screaming his name, me trying to break open the gate, my hands bloody from the attempt. What they did wasn't just criminal. It was unforgivable. The fire marshal ruled it as arson, accelerant had been used. Someone had intentionally lit our barn ablaze in the dead of night. The security cameras? Smashed. But I wasn't stupid. I had backups. Hidden trail cams placed all around the property weeks ago, just in case. And when I pulled the footage from that night, my hands started shaking. It was her. Ashley. She hadn't lit the match herself, but there she was. 10 minutes before the flames started. Flashlight in hand. Walking with someone in a hoodie toward the back of the barn. My sister. My own blood. And suddenly, everything snapped into place. Why she married into money. Why she joined Cheryl's circle. Why she hated that Dad left me the land. She didn't want the ranch, she wanted control. She wanted power. So she tried to take mine. But now, she had made a fatal mistake. I went straight to the sheriff with the footage. Clint didn't say a word as he watched it, just stared with a clenched jaw. Then he picked up the phone and made 2 calls. One to the district attorney's office. One to the fire department's investigator. Within 24 hours, a warrant was issued. Ashley Pierce Montgomery, arrested for felony conspiracy to commit arson and destruction of private property. Her mugshot hit the local paper the next morning. The community erupted. People who had once worshipped her at wine tastings and fundraisers were now asking how deep the corruption went. The HOA board scattered like roaches. Cheryl tried to distance herself, but it was too late. Her signature was on too many documents. Too many checks. I didn't stop there. With the petition signed by over 200 residents now, I filed a formal complaint with the State Attorney General's office. With Diane's help, I prepared a civil lawsuit, naming Cheryl, Ashley, and the HOA itself for gross misconduct, harassment, property damage, and emotional trauma. And then came the final move. Eviction day. The HOA's headquarters, my land, my building, was scheduled to be vacated by noon. I stood at the edge of the parking lot in my worn boots, arms crossed, as movers carried out file cabinets and desk chairs. Cheryl came out last, her eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. She walked right past me, clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. "You'll regret this," she muttered, not looking at me. I leaned in just slightly and said, "You should have read the deed." That afternoon, I replaced the HOA sign out front with a brand new one. Carter Ranch Community Center. Free programs for children and veterans. No HOA required. And when the local news showed up that evening to cover the story, me standing in front of the ashes of the barn, Eli by my side, the rebuilt gate behind us, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply said. They tried to burn down what we built, but all they did was clear the way for something better. 2 months later, the civil court ruled in my favor. Ashley was sentenced to 18 months of house arrest and community service. Cheryl lost everything, her position, her reputation, and over $150,000 in damages. The HOA dissolved. Millstone Ridge voted to disband it in a landslide. My land stayed mine. Untouched. Untamed. And I rebuilt the barn. Bigger this time. Stronger. We named it Domino's Haven. Every kid who comes through now sees a photo of that horse hanging above the entrance, nose pressed lovingly to Eli's shoulder. They tried to crush us with greed, jealousy, and fire. But we rose. We always rise. And when they gave me 72 hours to tear down my ranch, I tripled their rent instead. And then I took everything else.